Hi, this is Kylie. Welcome to my studio. So we are continuing with the nautical theme in the Mixed Media Emporium Facebook group, and this is the fourth and final week, and this week our theme is on the beach. So I'm taking this soft sketching pencil. I was going to sketch out the entire scene. I'd already done a very rough sketch of it, but instead I just draw these couple of lines. So one is not quite halfway and the other one's not quite a third of the way from the top, and these are just guidelines. So I'm now taking ultramarine and titanium white, both by Arteza. In a moment I will add Mars Black to my palette, and I'm going to use just that flat brush just to start to block in my colours. And again this week I'm going to paint a page that has a moon theme to it. I didn't start off this art book with that intention, but it's just the way that it's developed. So I'm taking my blue and white and then adding a little bit of black to it, so making that kind of blue-grey colour. And this is going to be the night sky, just putting in some paper there to protect the previous page in particular. And you'll see I've not mixed it fully, so there's little bits that are coming out of the different colours. That's fine. Adding a bit of water there just to loosen the paint up a little bit. And just blocking in that main sky at this point, though I will go back to it again just shortly. Taking some of the black there and just adding that in, not looking for this to be totally flat in colour. Next I'm going on to what will be the sea area, and just taking really the blue and the white and a little bit of that grey, but less of the black this time. And I'm just trying to differentiate between the sky, the sea, and that bottom part will become the sand. And at this point I will just give it a quick dry. Then I'm just going to take again a lighter shade of that grey blue, just adding more of the white to it, and my beach is just going to be that very light colour at the moment, and again I will be adding to that. I started with this colour because I was thinking, well, it's night time, it's the moonlight on it, and it wouldn't necessarily be the normal colour that we expect sand to be, but you will see I change that a little bit as the painting develops. So again, drying it at this stage. Now just going to go back into the sky and really just giving it another coat, just thickening up that layer. I could have put it on quite thick to begin with, but I quite like having just a thin layer to begin with and then building on top of it. And again you'll see adding in some more black there just to darken it slightly. And any blending is literally just being done on the page. So I'm now taking the phthalo blue and also the phthalo green, and I'll add those to my palette. But at this point I just decide to give it another good dry, just to make sure that it's dry between the different bands. So I'm taking my green and my blue, and I'm now just going to go over the sea part of the painting. And again you'll see that I haven't mixed them together. I very much want to get the two colours coming out separately. And I really love these colours for the kind of creating the sea. But again, this is still very much a bit of a base colour because I will be adding to this again. So just taking this angle shader, this will just help me get a straighter line. Just trying to get a straight line between the horizon of the sea where it meets the sky. And again drying it. So now taking burnt umber, and what I'm going to do here is to start to add in some rocks either side of the painting, so this will help kind of frame the painting, just giving the impression of the rocks here. So thinking that this is perhaps a little cove. So just very much trying to block in where the rocks will be at the moment. So I decide I'm going to take some yellow ochre because I do want the beach to have a little bit more colour. It was just feeling too washed out. I didn't want to add blue to it. So I'm taking some of the burnt umber and some of the yellow ochre and just mixing that together. But I'm actually mixing it in with some of the kind of grey blue from earlier, because I did want it still to have just a little bit of a hint of that. And at this point, just putting that in very roughly, not across the entire beach, but just at the sides. So I just want to say at this point, if you're not a member of the Mixed Media Emporium and you'd like to join us, then there will be a link below. Members are producing amazing work. It's really wonderful seeing all the different creations in there. Such talent in the group. Very grateful to each and every member that participates and that shares their work. So thank you for that. So just building that up. Just thinking about where my moon might have some light on the beach and where it might be that little bit darker. So taking a little bit more of that, but very much lighter. So it's down now more towards the grey colour, but still with a little bit of the burnt umber and the yellow ochre in it. And I've watered this down a bit because I didn't want this too thick. Not smoothing it out, just giving a notion of some texture there, and again making sure it's dry. So now I'm just going to kind of sketch in my moon, just deciding where it's going to go. And my intention with this one is to make it a moonrise. So I'm now going to take some titanium white and I will paint my moon in. Kept seeing a little rogue hair on my brush there, but I couldn't catch it, so I do swap that brush out for another one. And again, really just blocking this in, making sure I've covered the grey underneath, but I don't mind if little bits of that show through, because, you know, when we look at the moon we can often see that it's different colours, or there appears to be different colours because of the craters, etc. So just trying to get as even a line as possible, a kind of semicircle. And again, trying to get a reasonably straight line on that horizon line there. And at this point I can see that the painting is actually starting to take shape. Now I do still have, after this page, I will still have the actual cover of the book to do. I had hoped to maybe do it this week, but it would have made it too long a video, so I will be doing a separate video on the cover, but that probably won't be for another couple of weeks at least, simply because of other things that I've got on. So I will be doing that though, so anybody that's making a book, I will be back, and I'll just do a more general nautical theme on the front. Not sure what yet. It will probably have a moon, but we'll see when the time comes. So again, drying that off. This time taking a little bit of the burnt umber and adding it into a tiny bit of the Mars Black that I still had left on the palette. And all I'm going to do is just start to work in a wee bit more detail on the rocks, although it is very much still just an impression. Dabbing it a little bit, just getting a little bit of texture into the rocks. So I've had a number of different focal points over the weeks. I had my mermaid, I had the fish with the pirate's chest, and last week I had my surf girl. And this week I'm going to do something different again. So just finishing off those little bits of the rocks, although I will come back and play with them again, just adding in more detail later. But I'm now just going to take my pencil again, and what I'm going to do now is I want to draw some stacked stones, stacked rocks that you sometimes see on the beach. You get the beach artists who will come along and do some amazing constructions, and quite how they get the stones to balance at times, I don't know. They must have a great deal of patience. So I just want that to be sitting right there in front of the moon. So I've just penciled it in meantime, and all I'm going to do is to take some of the colours that I have on my palette and just to start to add some colour to them. I think I possibly added a little bit more white there, mixing it with a little bit of black, adding in some of the burnt umber, and I'm just going to lay down some colour in the rocks, in the stones. Not going right up to the edges at this point, I'm just getting some in, because what I want to do is to come in later with some different colours, just to start adding in some shade. And I'll get another brush, a smaller brush, and I'll just start to fill out the stones. Just a slightly different shade this time. But this is still just the base for these. Trying to keep roughly within the lines that I drew there, but it wouldn't matter if I went over them. And this is one of those things that I find fascinating when I see them on beaches or in rivers. Something very zen-like about them. I'm just trying to get that notion there of them balancing in unusual ways. So now taking some titanium white, just on a very small round brush, and just putting that along the shore. So just showing that there is some waves breaking onto the beach. Not doing one solid straight line, just doing little bits at a time. And just a little bit coming in there towards the rocks. then just some little bits out in the sea itself. Looking to make this quite a calm sea, rather than the one that I did last week with the Surf Girl where I had big waves. Now adding a little bit just to get the reflection of the moon on the water. So not doing it solid, just dragging it out there, which again gives that notion of there being some movement in the sea. Quite watery at that point, my paint, and just spreading it with my finger, but I will come back in a moment and just add a little bit more. Just taking my scrubby brush at this point, as I call it. It's an old brush that's well worn, and there's just certain jobs that I find it is good for. So there, I'm just able to move that paint out a little bit. So not getting solid lines or even colour, but just able to pull it out. And again, I'll come back and play with that a little bit later. Now going to add in some clouds, and again just using my scrubby brush for that. At this point my brush is quite dry, just with some paint on the end of it, and just looking to create some clouds. And again, they have just captured the light from the moon. So envisaging this as quite a calm evening. Just the tiniest bits of white onto the water. Adding some darker colour there, the burnt umber mixed with the black. And again, just blending it ever so slightly on the page when it needs to be, but not being concerned if it doesn't blend fully. And again, just creating that notion of texture. The odd bit of white coming off, but that's fine. Again, that just gets picked up as I move over the page. And making sure I give it a really good dry at this stage, because I'm now going to use my Derwent colour pencils. And I'm going to use these to start to add more detail. So I'm starting off with indigo, and I'm just going to use these to start to add a bit of interest to the stones. And as in previous weeks, I won't look to actually blend these out. I just want them kind of sitting there on top. It's just the way that I sometimes work with them, but they could be blended out further, but I'm quite happy with this. Now you might think it's an unusual colour. I think with all these kind of things it's just about adding interest. So just a little bit on each of the stones, but I will come in with other colours. So here I'm taking black, and with the black I'll just go into more of those areas where the stones meet, which would be darker along the bottoms of them. And just using that to add a bit more depth. Bring it out a little bit more in places, just to try and give the sense that the stones are not flat, they're kind of rounded. Next I'm taking the dark terracotta, and I'm going to start to work this into the rocks. So this is about, again, trying to show that the rocks are not flat. The light will be hitting the rocks in different places, so they will look, they will give different colours depending on where the light of the moon is hitting it. So that outside edge would tend to be where the light mainly catches it, but I'm doing little bits further in as well, just to show that the rocks have, that they're not flat faces on them. Now just adding in a few more rocks and stones, just lying at the base of the rocks there. I've made them a different scale to the standing stones, the stacked stones. Just taking the black now and again, just adding a bit of shadow to them. Now taking pale brown, and I'm just going to start to go over the beach. I just want the beach to be that little bit darker. So I've got a good base colour down there, and the pencil will sit nicely on top of that. Again, not looking for it to have a blended look, because the sand, even though it's flat, it will be textured. Taking the dark brown now and going in and behind the stacked stones, because there would be a bit of a shadow there cast by the moon hitting the front of the stones. And again going in and around the little stones that are lying and at the bottom of the rock. And just getting into the kind of little ground crevices of the rocks, just to put in a little bit of shade there. Now taking royal purple, this is a lovely colour, and I'm just adding some of this to the sea. And again, this is just about adding interest. For me, what's important when doing paintings like this is, if it's not realistic, if it's kind of stylised, then it's about adding colours that I think would go nicely rather than colours that might actually be there. So now I've got this dove grey, which is a lovely soft grey, and just adding in a bit of colour to the moon and also using it on the water. And you'll see, I think in a moment, I carry it through to the stones as well. So just putting a few little lighter bits on it here and there. And on the edge of the rocks, again, where the moonlight would be hitting it, and just catching that outer edge. And then a little bit in the sky. Just taking my sketching pencil, and I'm just going to go around those stones again, and I just use that to actually do a little bit of shading on them as well. Tiny, tiny details here and there. Taking the black again and just putting some darker spots onto the back, because obviously that's where the light isn't hitting, so it would have been a bit darker. And again, I think that's a bit of the royal purple. So just going back over colours, just here and there, building it up. Now I'm taking white. And I'm just going to add a few little dots in the sky with my white pencil, these are stars just showing through. And I'll add little bits here and there for highlights on the rocks and the lakes. But I've had a lot of fun creating this little art book, and although I didn't set out to do something that involved the moon every time, I'm quite happy that I did. And as I say, an important part of celestial navigation. And it gives light in dark places such as on the beach, and therefore I feel it fits well with the theme. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of a repair there. I obviously hadn't glued some of my pages together correctly, so I'll fix that next time. I want to put a little bit more detail on the one with my fish, and I will do that cover page sometime in the near future. So thanks so much for watching. Do check out what Nina's been up to this week, and hope to see you again next time. So thanks very much. Stay safe. Bye for now.